Thank you for joining us today. This month's webinar is going to be on the accounts payable system automations. My name is Brian, and I am here today with my fellow customer success manager, Nikki. We're along with our account executive, Eddie, and also our vice president of strategic accounts, Wendy. In today's webinar, we will be covering the benefits of streamlining your accounts payable process. We'd also love your feedback. So we have our emails up here. Without further ado, I'm just going to hand it off to Wendy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Fitzpatrick. Thank you for joining us to review some of the ways that we can assist your company to automate your accounts payable solution. We're going to start with one of our add-on features to the core MDS system, MDS RapidPay. What MDS RapidPay does is allows you to scan invoices into the system and allows you to configure the way invoices get routed. So you'll be able to have web approvals built into your AP system. There are two main components to RapidPay that help streamline your accounts payable process. The first is using optical character recognition, or OCR, which essentially attempts to read invoices that are getting scanned in. Now, the very first time that you're scanning invoices in from vendors, the system wouldn't know what company it belongs to, what vendor it belongs to. So the first month or two, there's a little bit more setup. We have this feature built into RapidPay called Lasso, which we'll get into in the demonstration. And it allows you to teach the system how to read off of those invoices. It's also going to look for exceptions like duplicate invoices. Maybe you want to assign an invoice to a work order or a legal, et cetera. It's fully integrated within all of the functions within MDS. And the second component is the ability to set up those user-defined, business-specific electronic approval workflows, how invoices need to move within your organization, how many people need to approve, levels of approval, et cetera. Now, how do you get those invoices into RapidPay? You just simply upload them in. If you have multiple pages that belong together, you can control the page breaks. Sometimes people will sort them and scan all of the invoices that are single pages. Maybe some of them are duplex. And I'll show you a little shortcuts on how to handle those types of situations. There are a few different document types. The most common is our standard invoice type, but we also have utility templates and templates specific to vendors like Con Ed or New York City Water Board. The difference between a standard and a utility or some of the templates is, for instance, with Con Ed, it'll pull all of the usage information for you. This is a screen on how you would go about searching for the invoices that you're going to scan into the system. What we're looking at here is the dashboards view. You're going to see different dashboard views based upon the role. There are two main roles within RapidPay. One is your AP staff that's scanning and coding those invoices. The screen we're looking at here is what we refer to as the validation screen. So essentially, anything that's not coded yet, you're going to be able to see whatever your tasks are. And another view would be from a new approver's perspective, which my colleague Eddie Ruiz will be demonstrating. What we're looking at here is a sample of what it looks like when you've already uploaded the image, and the information on the right is how it's been coded into the system. It's going to eliminate, on average, about 80% of your data entry. It's not always going to be able to read every single vendor invoice because some are handwritten. Sometimes you have part of the vendor information in a logo, but for the most part, it will be able to read most of the information so that it saves you a lot of time and eliminates a lot of the data entry that's being done. How does RapidPay know what company it belongs to, what vendor it belongs to? The way it does is you would actually select the company first, and then up on top, right above the invoice image, there's this little box that says company, and there's a little lasso there. You click on that button and you highlight the text on the invoice that represents that company. You only have to do that one time. Once you do it one time, the next month that you scan an invoice for that company, for that vendor, it's going to pull all of that information. You can lasso the company, subsidiaries, and vendors as applicable. The system will automatically try to read everything else like due date, invoice number, et cetera. But if it doesn't pick it up, you can also teach the system to do that. There are a few different invoice types in the system. The most common will fall under the standard invoice category. But we also have utility invoices, which allows for tracking of the usage information. And we talked about the templates for Con Ed and New York City Water Board as an example. And then the second type is a category type. Category types in RapidPay are user-definable types that controls how those invoices get routed. So a common example would be repair versus utility. If the category is repair invoices, maybe you need a maintenance supervisor to be the first level approval. Maybe you need the property manager to be a second level approval. Maybe you need a controller to be the third level of approval. So you can start to have those invoices routed either by role or by person within the organization. And there's all these different additional settings that will allow you to set up those thresholds based upon minimum and maximum dollar thresholds, what property managers are responsible for which properties. So categories drive the approval workflow. Now, prior to RapidPay, this could be a common way that folks get invoices into the system. And from the point that they're opening the mail to the point that they're cutting the checks, there's many steps. You may have a little bit more steps or a little bit less steps, but this is a good representation of what most people tend to do. You're opening and sorting, you're making copies. Maybe there's a stamp for a manual audit. You're manually entering the invoices into MDS. Maybe you're attaching images of the invoices. You're getting invoices to the approver somehow, some way. And that's dependent upon who's approving, where are they? Are they sitting at a desk? Are they remote? Are they out in the field? How are you getting those invoices to them? Some people are getting them emailed. Some people actually have stacks that they're getting handed. Sometimes when you're doing that, you end up spending a lot of time trying to track down missing invoices or who's holding on to invoices. And then most times, multiple people need to approve. And then finally, once everything's approved, then you go ahead and cut checks. Now with RapidPay, you're able to streamline that into like just 3 main pieces. And the first is just simply upload and code those invoices. And ideally, it's going to do the OCR automatically. And it's going to eliminate a tremendous amount of data entry. Then it's going to kick over to get routed to whoever needs to approve. And then once they're fully approved, you're able to cut checks. The system will not allow you to cut checks for anything that's pending approval. So it'll still show up as an unpaid item in MDS, but you will not be able to cut checks until it's fully approved. Some of the benefits, obviously, reducing the amount of late or lost invoices, reducing user error. There is a full audit of the entire life cycle of the invoice. As I mentioned before, it eliminates approximately 80% of the data entry. You're able to get your invoices approved faster because they're getting routed electronically. So it doesn't matter where you are or how you're logging in. The approver will receive an email that says, you have invoices that require your approval. Click on this link. They'll click on that link and they'll be able to approve their invoices immediately. Full transparency on the life cycle of invoice. There is email notifications that an approver would get a notification that they have invoices that require their approval. And there's also a messaging component built into RapidPay associated with the invoice itself. So say, for instance, you're an approver and you have a question about the invoice, you could write off of the invoice, send a message and have somebody respond right away. That messaging audit also stays within the invoice as well. Here's an example of setting up a simple workflow. This is something that we would work with you. We would spend time with your organization and learn about how you currently approve invoices, and then take that process and build it into the MDS RapidPay system in order to match what you're doing manually, but electronically. So for instance, we would set up, first define all of your different categories. What are the different ways that those invoices get routed differently? And then you would have multiple levels of approvals. There's no limit to the number of levels of approval that you can have, but this is a good example. So you have repair as the category. The first level of approval is the maintenance manager. The second would be the property manager. Maybe you want to incorporate a board approver if it's a condo co-op. And then you have whoever the final approver is. Another thing that is super helpful and a huge time saver, especially for property management companies, when you're providing financial packages to owners or other recipients, there is a report in MDS. It's called the Images of Paid Invoices report. If you're currently generating MDS report packages, you can include the Images of Paid Invoice report as a report in your report package. And what that does is it saves you a lot of time, because if you're preparing packages today, you're probably attaching copies of invoices. So this will also save you a lot of time in your reporting. We talked about full audit of the invoices. This is what it looks like. So from the time that it's initially uploaded all the way through to the point that you cut the check, the full audit and how much time it's sitting in each stage is capturable. Invoices pending approval show up as unpaid invoices in MDS. However, they will not be available to be selected for payment until the invoice is fully approved. So right now, if you're selecting vouchers for payment in MDS, it will default, and you're not using RapidPay, it will allow you to select anything that's unpaid. When you implement RapidPay, if it's pending approval, it will not allow you to select it for payment until it's fully approved. Many of you are probably familiar with the query voucher screen. This is the query voucher screen in Spire. So you can see you have all of your paid, open, voided invoices. If the invoice came in through RapidPay, you'd be able to click on the image of the invoice right from this screen. And this is what the invoice looks like when you're logged into your AP system in MDS Spire. It will also look for any exceptions, like if there's a duplicate invoice or if it needs to be associated with legal, work order, etc. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the other options that are available to help additionally automate or further streamline your accounts payable process. Some companies want to completely outsource the coding of their invoices. Others prefer to handle that in-house. But if you're looking for a full service offering, we do have a partnership with a company by the name of IPS. And it's a complete integration between IPS and MDS RapidPay, where the invoices get forwarded. Instead of coming to your office, they get forwarded to IPS's location. IPS will code the invoices and then import them into MDS. And from there, starts the approval workflow. If you would like us to make that introduction and set up a demo, just contact your MDS representative. I'm going to show you a live demo on how you can upload invoices into the system and how the system reads those invoices using the OCR recognition. So I've logged into MDS RapidPay. The first thing I want to do is choose the files that I'm going to scan in. So depending on how you're scanning the invoices into the system, you could have like just one big giant PDF with all of the invoices, or you could have them scanned as individual invoices and just upload those files. But before I do, I just want to point out what these other options are. For instance, if you happen to sort, and this is mostly helpful in the first 1 or 2 months when you're still coding those invoices, because once the system learns how to read them and you're doing the OCR, then it's really not necessary anymore. But if you're scanning invoices for the very first time and you want to sort them by company or by vendor, you can do that. If you are sorting them by single page or invoices that are duplex, or maybe you have all your Con Ed invoices and they're all 4 pages, the system will default to a single page break after each page. But you can say, okay, I want a page break after every 2 pages or after every 3 pages, or these are duplex invoices, etc. I'm just going to leave this blank. We talked about the different document types, standard invoices versus my templates like Con Ed and New York City Water Board, and then just a generic utility invoice. We also have Verizon as a template as well. You can assign to a specific user. And then this category here, these are all my user-defined categories that drive the workflow. We use repair and utility as an example. Repair had the 4 levels of approval. A utility, maybe it's just like one person that needs to approve. So I'm leaving everything blank, just so you could see what it looks like. I'm going to click upload. The only thing I did was grab those 4 invoices, and the very next screen you're going to see is the screen that's showing me page breaks. And because I left that page break option empty, it's just assuming that there's a break after each page. But say maybe you did that and realize that these 2 pages belong together. All you have to do is click here, and now these 2 pages belong to the same document. So this could be considered one invoice as opposed to 2 invoices. That's not the case here. These are individual invoices. So I'm going to click on it again to add that page break back in. I could hit finish either at the top or the bottom. Now the system's trying to read the invoices by doing the OCR read. And so it's going to pick up anything that it can, and anything that it can't, it will let me know. So as you can see, it was able to pick up company, vendor, invoice number, date, invoice amount. It recognizes based upon the vendor that you've selected what the default expense account is, because that's pulling from the vendor screen. It's missing the category, and that's because I left it blank when I scanned it initially. Remember, I said that the category is what drives the approval workflow. But I'm just going to select it here. I'm going to say, okay, this is repairs, and now I'm going to be able to proceed. All I have to do is hit finish, and it'll move on to the next invoice. Anything that is missing, it will let me know. Not a big deal. Whatever's missing, you could still manually key it in. Go ahead and finish. And it's giving me messages saying it's missing the category. So I'm just going to select that here again. I could have selected that early on and we wouldn't have to do that after each one. So as you can see, out of those 4 invoices, there was only one field on one invoice that was missing and everything else was picked up. So now I could go ahead and finish. Now it says all invoices have been successfully validated. Would you like to send these invoices to MDS Explorer for final verification? I could say yes, and now it's gone over. I do want to show you very quickly how to teach the system to read an invoice. So in this example, I could select from the list of companies in MDS, I'm going to select Melville Plaza, and then I click on this little company Lasso up here, and I'm going to highlight what on the invoice represents that company. In this example, it could be Melville Plaza or it could be the address. I'm going to select the 1015 Main Street address. Just going to create a little box there. Do you want to process a Lasso? I say, okay. And that's it. So in order to check that it read it correctly, you want to come up here and see, okay, I tried to Lasso 1015 Main Street. It read it as Melville Plaza. That's okay because both work. But say I wanted to fix that, I could just break that Lasso and tighten up my search. And now it says 1015 Main Street. Okay, that's good. Next month, when I scan this invoice for this vendor, for this company, I'm not going to have to do this again. It's going to remember.
My name's Eddie Ruiz. As you can see right now, I'm already logged in as my admin user, but let's say I want to go ahead and approve invoices. Maybe I wouldn't see all these different screens up top, like upload invoice, tasks, and profile. As an approver, I would probably just only see approve for payment. So I'm going to go ahead and click approve for payment. And then here I have a list of all my invoices that I need to approve for payments. One way a user can go in, or one way an approver can go in, is going through the RapidPay site, putting in their credentials, or maybe they might receive an email saying, hey, you have a few documents that need to be approved. They would click on that link, and then it would bring them to this page where they can go ahead and approve the invoice. But here I have a list of all my invoices. It's a nice little table here where you can sort by company, by vendor, but from here you'll be able to approve all your different invoices. I'm going to drill down to a specific invoice here. And on the left-hand side here, you'll have an image of the actual invoice. And on the right-hand side here, you have all the necessary information. So as an approver, there's a few things that I can do. First thing I can do here is simply approve for payment. Once I approve for payment, I'll get a dialog box here saying, do you want to approve this invoice for payment? Once you hit OK, then we'll jump off to the next invoice and you'll be able to keep doing that. A great thing about this being able to approve, you'll be able to access the RapidPay system via a tablet, a cell phone. So if you're on the go, if you're a property manager or a manager, you'll be able to do approve pay invoices with a few clicks of a button. That's approve for payment. I'll go down this list here. You can reject an invoice. To reject an invoice, there's 2 ways to reject an invoice. The first one would be reject invoice for correction or reject invoice and do not pay. Reject invoice for correction would be, for example, let's say the amount is incorrect. You want to go ahead and reject that as an approver, you can go ahead and reject and then put in a reason, maybe the amount is incorrect. And from the validate stage, the person who's validating will be able to go and see that the approver rejected it and then be able to make the corrections that they need. Or they can reject the invoice and do not pay entirely. But anytime you pick one of these 2 options, you always have to put in a reject reason. Going down the list here too, we have assigned tenant chargeback. If you have an invoice and you want to be able to charge back the tenant, you'll be able to do it from this screen. You'll be able to put in the building, the unit, whatever the charge code is, and it grabs all that information from your MDS system. So everything is completely synced in that regard. And then you can put in the chargeback amount. So once you click finish here, it's going to automatically charge that resident for the chargeback. Next button here we have is a track invoice. From the approver side of things, they'll be able to see where this invoice stands. So they can see when it was uploaded, it's a complete audit of what happened with this invoice. And everything is date and time stamped for you. We have this nice little send message feature as well. So if the approver wants to go and send a message internally to someone in the organization, they'll be able to do that as well. Put whatever comments that they want. And the great thing about it too is you have a full message log here as well. So if there's communication going back and forth, it's going to completely have an audit of here of what's going on with the messages between each user within the organization. A few other features that I want to touch base on here. We have upload attachments. So if you want to upload any supporting documents, for instance, like a purchase order, you'll be able to add that to this particular invoice. And then probably my favorite feature is the annotation feature. So from here, you're able to annotate or mark up any invoice. So for instance, you want to point to different things, you want to actually write in text, you'll be able to actually mark up the invoice. And then the great thing about this markup is that if you are sending out your financial reports or your report packages to the different owners or board members, these annotations will actually be on the invoice or within the report package.